Hello there.
Shalom.
How are y'all doing today? Welcome to the counting of the Omer. Today is day 15 or day 1 of week 3 of the counting of the Omer. So here is the blessing that goes with that. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al sefarat ha'omer. And that is, blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by his commandments and commanded us about the counting of the Omer. Amen to that. All right, so we've been talking of late about the bride.
Yes.
And how Israel has been described as the bride, as the one that is married to the Lord. And we talked for a couple of days about even the whole issue of the northern kingdom getting the certificate of divorce, and then kind of had an amendment the very next day where we were like, hey, don't keep in mind that he was using that as an analogy.
Right.
And in the very next passages, he was saying, I am still calling you back. You know, it's like he's not sent her away or given her a certificate of divorce and is done with her, like so many have interpreted it over the years, wouldn't you say? Especially from the Christian side of things, that now that Yeshua, the bridegroom, has come, you know, he's just completely written off the Jewish people, and that's not what he's done at all, wouldn't you say?
Well, we've been teaching replacement theology, that the church has replaced Israel. And that is not biblical at all.
No, it's not.
Okay.
One of the places that you see some of this is we see the concept of the tent of God's people, you know, being expanded. You know, there's numerous instances, even from the Exodus itself, when people who were not Israelites or descendants of Abraham left Egypt with them, and became a part of the community. You see other instances throughout the Old Testament with Rahab, with Ruth, and others that are in Uriah the Hittite, others that are brought in, and while they may not be considered, you know, Jews themselves,
their children certainly
but their children were, because they have been added to the community. So there's this idea of it's always supposed to be going out and expanding to the nations and to the Gentiles. And one of the places that happens is in Isaiah 54. He says, sing, barren one who has not given birth, burst into singing and shout, you who have not travailed, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married one, says Adonai. And he says in verse 2, enlarge the place of your tent, stretch out your tabernacle curtains, do not hold back, lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes, for you will spread out to the right hand and to the left. Your offspring will possess the nations and will resettle the desolate cities. And he goes on in verse 5, he says, you know, for your maker is your husband. Adonai Tzabaoth is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. And he will be called God of all the earth. For Adonai has called you back like a wife deserted and grieved in spirit, like a wife of one's youth that is rejected, says your God. So I mean, it's always intended to expand and include more and more, not just territory, but people that are being brought under that protection, brought under that tent, and included in the family. Abraham was well known for his hospitality, and he was always trying to encourage people to come in and be a part of what God was doing in him and through him. So he is, when we talk about the bride is Israel.
Absolutely.
They are still very much in covenant marriage with the Lord. There's still a sense of expectation with him of what is coming. Now, there's a blindness that's going on right now, but we're seeing that lifted in our generation.
Yes.
But there's some amazing things. Even in Isaiah itself, we were going to look at, we see some of these expansions going on, right?
Yes, Isaiah 56.
Isaiah chapter 56. I've got a sticky page here. This is one that shows up in the book of Acts, Acts chapter 8. He said, "Thus says Adonai," this is 56 verse 1. He says, "Preserve justice, do righteousness, for my salvation is about to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the one who does this, the Son of Man who takes hold of it, who keeps from profaning Shabbat, and keeps his hand from doing any evil. Do not let a son of a foreigner who has joined himself to Adonai say, Adonai will surely exclude me from his people." So even right there, he's saying, look, if they've joined themselves to Adonai, they're not supposed to be treated second class.
Or as a foreigner, anymore.
Or as a foreigner, yeah. And then he says, "Nor let the eunuch say, Behold, I am a dry tree. For thus says Adonai to the eunuchs who keep my Shabbatot, who choose what pleases me and hold fast my covenant. I will give to them in my house and within my walls a memorial and a name, better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that will never be cut off." In verse 6, "As also the foreigners who join themselves to Adonai to minister to him, and to love the name of Adonai, and to be his servants, all who keep from profaning Shabbat, and hold fast to my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain, and let them rejoice in my house of prayer." So they're going to be brought to Jerusalem. They're going to be brought into the temple and allowed to participate. "Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be acceptable on my altar. For my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations. Adonai Elohim, who gathers the dispersed of Israel, declares, I will gather still others to him, to those already gathered."
Amen. So there was always this idea of Israel expanding her tent, or Israel expanding in how many people join her. So they are a priestly nation. And that priestly nation was supposed to be priests to the other nations, to bring them to God.
To facilitate
right?
their worship.
They are set apart for that purpose.
Yeah. And so as we talk about being the bride of Messiah, he is the one who brings us in.
Amen.
He is the one who makes it possible for that expansion to the nations. He is the mechanism. We come and want to join in what God is doing in his people by coming to Messiah. Right. And that's a lot of what we see in Ephesians chapter 2, isn't it?
Yes,
How we talk about that?
And I just want to reiterate this verse 3, the first part of it in 56 of Isaiah. "A foreigner joining Adonai should not say, Adonai will separate me from his people." In other words, I'm not really a part of his people. No. Adonai, through Messiah, brings us in and makes us a part of his people. There is no
taking their place.
There's no taking their place, but it's no wonder that all of this takes place after Isaiah 53 and after the suffering servant. After Messiah has come and died, yes, he says to the barren woman of Israel, you will have more children than that one which has a husband. Right? Expand your tents. And it will even expand to the eunuchs, even of the people of Israel, but to the eunuchs, and it will expand even to the foreigners. Right? All that is possible because of the coming of the suffering servant.
Yes. If you remember Ephesians chapter 2, this is a passage we quote often in our services. It says, talking about us as Gentiles, it says, "At that time you were separate from Messiah, excluded from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world." That was our situation. "But now," he says in verse 13, "in Messiah Yeshua, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of the Messiah." And then verse 19 says, "So then you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but you are fellow citizens with God's people and members of God's household."
We've been brought into the tent.
Yeah. And
brought into the house.
You've been built on the foundation made up of the emissaries and prophets, with Messiah Yeshua himself being the cornerstone. He's the essential part of this. In him the whole building, being fitted together, is growing into a holy temple for the Lord. In him you also are being built together into God's dwelling place in the Spirit. So it's we are a part of the bride. We have been brought into that nation, into that people, we're now considered citizens of the Commonwealth of Israel.
Yes.
And it's, we are brought in, made children and descendants of Abraham by faith in Messiah. Just as Abraham believed and it was credited to him as righteousness, that's same thing is true for us. John puts it like this, where he says, he came unto his own, but his own did not receive him. But whoever did receive him, those trusting in his name, to these he gave the right to become children of God. They were born not of a bloodline, nor of human desire, nor of man's will, but of God. This was his plan and his purpose all along, to bring us in and to include us as the bride in covenant relationship with him. And
that's not saying that the Jewish people don't have a place. Those who even throughout time that have not believed, right? They were still in covenant with God because of the patriarchs.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean they don't need Messiah. I'm not saying that. But they were still the apple of his eye because of the patriarchs. Okay? So we are brought into that covenant through Messiah. They stay within that covenant in Messiah. Okay? Romans 11 deals with the idea of being grafted in and what that means. And actually, I would like to talk about that more tomorrow instead of today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's really think in terms of being a part of the nation. I think that's important for us to wrap our minds around, because the new covenant was given to Israel and to Judah. It was not given to the Gentile church. It was given to Israel and Judah. So if we want to participate in the new covenant, we have to be part of the people who it was given to.
Mm-hmm.
And that is his wife. That is his bride. That is his people. That is his nation. We come along and say, we want to be a part of you. Right? Zechariah 8 talks about take the hold of a tzitzit of a Jew and say, let us go with you, for we have heard that the Lord is with you. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we have to come alongside of the Jewish people. It's not us and them. It's all of us together. Yes, we're made up of native-born Jew and we're made up of native-born Gentile. But all together we make up Israel. And the Tanakh makes it clear that that was always supposed to be the case.
Mm-hmm. They
are a priestly nation because they're acting in that role for all the rest of us. Somebody had to fulfill the priestly role. Not everybody can be just a citizen. Just like within Israel, out in the wilderness, and in the Tanakh, you see the Levites and the sons of Aaron taking on those special roles for the rest of the tribes. It is if we are part of the rest of the tribes, and we're being made a part of the people. We're being attached to these other tribes. And here we are, we're coming in. And because we come in, then we can take on a priestly role to the nations and telling others that the King of Israel has come. Mm-hmm. That the Messiah has come. Come and you can be a part of the nation as well. Come and be a part of what God is doing, what God had always wanted to do. Am I making sense?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these things God has a heart for all people, not just the Jewish people. Is it special to be Jewish? Absolutely. Paul says that, right?
Yes, he does.
Paul says that.
There are many benefits
to being a Jew. Well, with that being said, there's even something special about being a Gentile who gets to be included.
Mm-hmm.
We should feel the privilege and the pleasure and God's joy of just being able to be included and not feel as if, wait a minute, how come they're special and I'm not? Because God doesn't say that at all.
No,
that's the flesh that says that. That's the enemy that whispers that into our ears. That's not God saying that. God says, come into my tent, come into my house and be a part of my people. Sit down. Be one of my children.
Have a place at my table.
Have a place at my table. And whereas, there's, again, I don't want to get into Romans 11 right now. I don't want to get into Romans at all because it also talks about things in Romans 8 through 12. And ladies, you know that recently we did a study on Romans 10, 11, and 12 that is very important in our understanding of who we are, who they are, how we're supposed to be to the Jew even that doesn't understand that Messiah has come yet, right? All of these things fit together. And bottom line is we all make up the family of God for those of us who come in faith.
Yes. And since Messiah is the bridegroom, we are the bride. You look at Ephesians 5. This will be just real quick. It says that he is the head of his community. Messiah is the head of his community. He says, Messiah loved his community, gave himself up for her to make her holy, having cleansed her by the immersion in the Word. So we are being made holy by the work of the Word coming to life in us, in order so that his glorious church, his community, right, his people, not having stain or wrinkle or any such thing, but in order that she might be holy and blameless. He nourishes and cherishes his body, just as Messiah does his community, because we are members of his body. Right? So there's so much that he desires to do in us and grow in us and strengthen in us. And that only really happens if we realize that we have been added to the bride that was already in existence, and the bride that will continue to be in existence, well into the future, into the kingdom, when he comes for his bride, and gathers us from the nations, gathers us from the four corners of the earth.
And we want to make clear, there is no such thing biblically as Israel and then the church. The church is Israel. The church was in the wilderness with God. That was Israel in the wilderness at Mount Sinai. Stephen says that in Acts 7, right? If you have a King James version, go look it up. It says it plainly that the church was in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. And so it's always been God has one people. Mm-hmm. One people. And even though he gave them permission to be Israel and Judah for a time, the idea was always to bring them back together. Mm-hmm. Okay? And when they come back together, they're supposed to bring a bunch of us with them because we're supposed to be holding the seed of a Jew, saying, let us go with you.
Mm-hmm. That was his way of scattering the seed.
Yes.
And though there may be blindness for a time, it's not supposed to be forever. And so he's opening the eyes of the Jewish people to Messiah's identity. And it's opening our eyes as well.
Amen. Amen. And so we'll talk about that more tomorrow as we get into Romans. But just know that, yes, we are part of the bride. We are the bride of Messiah. But that is Israel.
Mm-hmm. All right, with that, we're going to close out for today, and we will see y'all ideally tomorrow.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.